Sympathy business is big business. For a lot of florists, this is what pays your bills. For others, it might feel intimidating. In this episode of Stems and Success, we'll cover tips for smooth conversations. I'll share a few designs that I hope you'll love, and we'll talk about selling those custom pieces successfully. We're going to focus on in person consultations a lot, but the talking points that I'll share can be applied to any sympathy sale, whether it's a vase arrangement over the phone or you're helping a customer choose a keepsake gift in your store. Let's get started. My name is Kelsey Thompson, AIFD, and I truly love working with families to create stunning sympathy pieces. But first things first, literally, let's rewind to when I started out in this industry. I had a really hard time making suggestions to my customers, especially when it came to sympathy. I didn't want them to feel like I was trying to sell them something. I didn't want to come across as used car sleazy while someone was truly having the worst day of their life. What I had to learn was that by making suggestions and by sharing my design ideas, what I was actually doing was serving my customers. They came to me specifically for those ideas. By not speaking up, I was doing them a disservice. They needed me to be the leader and take away some of their funeral planning decision fatigue. Here's the truth. Anyone that walks through your door has come to your business specifically for your products and services and creative skills, and they expect to pay for them. Because, side note, you're a business. Don't feel bad about providing those products and services and creative suggestions. If a family doesn't love an idea you have, or if it doesn't fit into their budget, they'll let you know and you can move on to the next step in the conversation. But you'll never sell those artistic or upscale sympathy pieces if you can't confidently communicate about them. That's what we're going to chat about today in Stems and Success. Consultations are very much about reading the room. Some families come in blazing with set ideas or budgets. Others are overwhelmed and indecisive to the point that the conversation becomes challenging. Now, as florists, we have to navigate these tough situations with tact while still acting as a guide. Think about it. Our job is in the sympathy industry. We do this every day, while this may be someone's first time dealing with the overwhelming logistics of a funeral. Add in grief, in family dynamics, and you can understand how having someone to steer the conversation can feel like a lifeboat. That person is you. You need to be empathetic while still leading the consultation along. Now, personally, I find it best to start easy. Whether your funeral family is chomping at the bit or slowly straggling into the consult area, getting some of those general questions out of the way can establish the tone and help them settle in. I like to tell them what to expect up front. We're the guide, remember, so that way they don't try to jump ahead before I have a grasp of what I really need to help them the best. I always introduce myself and then I say something like, we'll start out by going through some easy logistics and then we'll discuss flowers and then styles. I've got some visual aids and samples and I can sketch out anything we want as well. Now let's start with the service date. Now, this gentle initial guidance lets them know that I'm a professional, I'm prepared, I'm experienced, and they can trust me to achieve what they want. By the way, I am totally a paper and pencil girly when it comes to sympathy meetings, so I'm including a sample consultation form for you with this video. Just follow the link below to grab it. Now, once you have gotten through the basics, name, service location, dates, etc., then it's time to start gathering design cues. I always ask what their loved one is wearing and the color of the casket, or the color and the dimensions of the urn if it's a cremation. That way, if their loved one is wearing a bright red and purple sweater, it's important to know so that I can suggest colors that complement it or at least won't clash. Same with the casket color. Now, if the family wants lettered script, I think it looks nice to coordinate that to the metallic of the hardware on the casket. Maybe this is me being super type A, you do you, but extra attention to detail is going to level up your funeral work, and your families will appreciate that you cared enough to ask. Next, I transitioned into talking about design, really focused on that word transition, because the family may have cued you into some requests when they first came in, but I like to ease into specifics. So I start by asking the family to just tell me more about their loved one. Learning these details can help you make better suggestions for style, color, or personalized tributes. Let's pretend we're working with a family that's planning a service for great-grandma Eileen. Here's a few phrases you can use to get this transition started. Tell me about Eileen, her hobbies, her personal style, or what made her happy. What made Eileen unique and special to those who knew her? Now, these are two examples of good open-ended questions. They're open-ended enough to get the family talking, but also specific enough that you don't end up down a 20-minute rabbit hole of baking stories. Not that I ever turned down a good banana bread recipe. As your customers answer, I want you to listen for specific colors and flowers, or even themes that could inspire design elements. Watch for those emotional cues or responses that might indicate special significance. So, for example, if a family member is tearing up, recalling a happy memory of planting her butterfly garden with her, you might suggest incorporating a design element or color that represents that theme. If all the family members start chuckling when someone mentions Eileen's obsession with Scrabble, use it as a cue to suggest incorporating some of those items. You get the idea. This is how you can successfully sell custom designs. Showing some photos is a great tool to assist you, but being able to really draw out those stories and that personal information is going to help you suggest personalized pieces. Making personalized sympathy pieces is my personal favorite part of my job, and I think a lot of you may feel the same. Getting to showcase someone's life and personality through flowers is such an honor. For our pretend great grandma Eileen, I decided to try a creative twist on the classic butterfly request. Now, this standing spray is made on an Oasis jumbo cage. I wanted to have lots of room for additional flowers and to show you some of the mechanics. Let's talk mechanics first. I'm going to try to share some images as I go along. For the wings, I traced out a general shape on some craft paper to use as a guide, and then I used this heavy crepe paper that I cut into sections and then accordion folded. I pierced one end with a 22 gauge wire and attached it to a dried fan palm for the insertion. Now the palm is U-glued to the crepe paper in a few spots on the back, and that helps with sturdiness and to help the wings spread out. And then I trimmed my crepe paper to follow my craft guide and then added some texture with the Just for Flowers spray. I really liked the Design Master on this. It was perfect for the paper. I was able to layer it up for more saturation, and it didn't affect the integrity of the paper at all. Now to keep things extra dry, I wrapped some bind it tape at the base of the paper where it meets the wood of the palm. That way the water wouldn't wick up too far. Then to attach the wings, I inserted the palm stem and also zip tied it to the cage so these bad boys aren't going anywhere. For the flowers, I simply mossed the cage and then I made grouped insertions of the stock and these antique carnations to kind of echo the shape of the wings. This could be even fuller, or you could get some fun color groupings to represent different parts of the wing patterns. For the body, I focused on lots of texture and depth with green trick, carnations, and spray roses. Now, I had some bells of Ireland to use up, but I do think some tinted craspedia would be pretty cute as little antenna too. There's actually very little product in this design, and I could have used even less if I wanted, so I think it's very cost effective. Let's talk about selling something like this. If you are suggesting custom designs to a family, my number one piece of advice is don't start with the main piece, start with the side or accent designs. They have to get a casket spray or an urn surround, but if you start with that, sometimes that's all the further you're going to get. Instead, use the personal details that you've gathered to suggest some unique side pieces first, then work your way up to the main piece. This would be a very sweet piece from the grandkids, but if we had started with the main piece, we might have never gotten to this. If you're working with a non-family member or selling over the phone, don't be afraid to let them know that you'll need a few minutes to either sketch the design or gather some photos for visual aids. A customer that wants something custom like this will appreciate the care, and they can wait 20 minutes for you to call them back or email them some images and take your time to really make a good estimate. Let's talk pricing. If you are estimating something new, try doing a life-size mock-up. I always keep a roll of craft paper so I can sketch my shape, and then I quickly pencil in circles for focal flowers and lines for line flowers. You could also grab some stems and make a flat lay of one section, and then multiply your sections for an estimated recipe. When I'm doing really labor-intensive projects like this, I always charge more than my standard labor percentage because it takes more time than a cookie-cutter design would. I found it really helpful to charge for the prep work separately. So in this case, I would charge by the minute for the wing prep. Then once they're done and attached, and I moved on to doing the flower part, then I'll do a 40 to 50% labor instead of my normal 30% markup, because I can whip up a traditional standing spray in 15 minutes, but this butterfly took me 45 minutes because I had to jump through some mental and mechanical hurdles, and I need to get paid for my time. Sales tip number 2 is to suggest an arrangement with keepsake elements. This design could be a lovely mid-size urn surround or a nice accent for a gift like this candle. And it's designed in the 10.5-inch design ring, which is this. These rings are also available in a 14.5-inch size. And what I like about these is that it's all one unit. So it's attached to the plastic tray and it holds a little bit of water for those multi-day services. My funeral directors like how easy these are. Again, this is a 10.5-inch size. A little tip, the 6-inch and 9-inch Lomi design dishes fit perfectly in the center, so I turn one upside down and it gives a little lift to my urn or angel or whatever I have in here. Now these design rings are one of my favorite products, and here's the thing why. Time is money and labor is expensive. So proportionally, I spend more on labor than I do on hard goods. So any chance that I have to make things easier and faster, I take it. Could I create something like this with a tray or a pan glue? Yes, absolutely, but I don't want to pay someone for the 15 minutes that takes when they could be creating a $200 arrangement in that time frame. I like this for event work too. It's great for the base of cake stands or around a beverage dispenser or with a lantern in the center as a centerpiece. Now for this design, I kept the color palette pretty tight with shades of this orchid tone, greens, and whites. When I get requests for butterflies, I like to give them a natural place to land versus having all of them just kind of flying about. So I cage the design with some curly willow. And when I insert curly willow at this angle, I always tape the ends to a wood pick and then insert with those. That wood kind of soaks up the water and swells a bit, and it just stays better than those waxy curly willow stems. I wanted to show you designs today with everyday accessible flowers. So this is just carnations, stock, bells of Ireland, some hypericum, and 3 stems of greenery. That's it. The midnight foam just disappears, so I don't have to overstuff it. And this would retail about $175 at my shop without the candle. Now you may have noticed that my white flowers are artificial. That's because that's the keepsake part of this arrangement, and it's actually a faux wreath. Let's see if I can get it pulled out. Okay, so this size of design ring is perfect because it fits a lot of the standard faux wreaths, especially when you get into fall and winter designs. So like a pampas or a long needle pine wreath will look really cool, and it gives you a lot of volume, and the customer likes that there's something to enjoy now and later. Now, if I was selling this to a family, I would suggest a side piece with a second white wreath, maybe add some butterflies and pops of those orchid colored flowers. And that would be something they could use at the funeral and then leave at the cemetery after the service. See what I mean about sales with service? These are things that many families don't think about, such as leaving a decorated gravesite after the services are done. You can be thoughtful, professional, and profitable at the same time with your professional suggestions. My last design is my way of using up some broken carnation heads. I may have got a little rowdy with the cooler door and the bucket, and I decided to just lean into it. I could totally see this piece next to a photo, or you could do a mirrored pair of them, framing an urn or a personal item. With more and more people doing celebration of life memorials, services are turning into events, so don't hesitate to put on your event planning hat. A pair of designs like these on a mantle or on a sideboard in the entryway would make a really big impact. Now this tribute is made in the Oasis event saddle, and I've got 2 pieces of the midnight foam turned on their sides long ways like this. And then I cut that front piece just a bit shorter to give me a stair step base, and then use waterproof tape to really delivery proof it. I used 22 gauge wire to give some structure to my equisetum, aka horsetail, and I have a piece of the wire going in at each end and meeting in the middle. And that's what lets me get these nice clean squares and then this drop down. I really wanted this design to be very vertical and vegetative, and these equisetum help me keep that eye moving up and down with a strong static line. The carnations are threaded on another 22 gauge wire, and I made a hook on one end and then cut the heads as short as possible and threaded through the middle. Now this hook keeps the carnations from popping off at the end, and then I wrapped the other end of the wire once I had completed my chain onto a leftover carnation stem for insertion. You could really extend this line down by even hooking 2 wires together for some extra drama. Now carnations hold up just fine for a few days like this with some crowning glory, but you could also seal the ends with some cold glue at each point here to help trap in that moisture. I did add a few extra carnations kind of designed into the foam to really carry my drape up into the center of the design, and then I made sure there were a few on the back as well. When you have a front-facing design like this, it's really important to create depth and balance by carrying that color back and all the way through. Plus, you have to consider literal physical balance. You don't want things getting too front heavy. I added a dynamic line with some beargrass loops and tails, and this would be where you can also add some personalized ribbon. Now, is this design for everyone? Nope. Could I totally see some families or customers of mine loving it? Yes. And that brings me to design point number 3, be ready with alternatives. You might have the best idea ever. You might suggest a Scrabble board made entirely of roses with Eileen's major life achievements all spelled out. But the family might not have the budget for it or might not be their vibe. So be ready to pare down ideas or suggest alternative flowers or styles. This is where you can ask good follow-up questions to see what they liked or didn't love about your idea and then narrow it down. A lot of this is just learning what's in season and what can be subbed. Can you do cushion palms instead of dahlias, or reflex some roses instead of garden roses? Never make them feel bad. They aren't downsizing and they aren't naysaying. They're just choosing a different creative route. Being able to read the room and adjust on the fly is a skill that is developed with practice and personality, but role playing can be really helpful. So try taking turns with your staff and creating a pretend profile, just like we did with Miss Eileen, and have them play out some family consultation scenarios. I also like to have a short list of general price ranges and styles handy for my staff too. Getting familiar with your price points will help them speak with confidence. Now, I could talk for hours about sympathy, but we'll wrap things up for today. I hope you've taken away some small tip or design idea to use in your own shop. Be sure to grab that link for that consultation form and leave us a comment with questions or what topics you'd like to cover next time on STEMs and Success.